Well, hello, and welcome to the first of our Nobody is Innovating kind of live streams. I'm Donald Farmer and the VP of Research and Innovation at Nobody Studios. And of course, the title Nobody is Innovating is a pun on the Nobody Studios name. And, as a venture studio, one of our tasks is to create an environment in which innovation can be nurtured, in which innovation can be supported, but also, from my point of view, very important that innovation can be generated from within the studio. This is something that I think is very different from traditional venture models, where in traditional venture models, people have ideas, often very good ideas, of course. They come to venture funds, maybe they'll come to, if they're lucky, they might be able to go to an incubator, they might be able to go to an accelerator, but typically they're bringing their ideas to the venture funding team and they're looking for help. They're looking for advice, and they're looking for money to get started with their project. And this is all very good. It's actually worked pretty well. We have a tremendous innovation culture within, you know, famously within Silicon Valley, but actually there are many centers in the world nowadays, everywhere from South Africa and Rwanda and Nigeria, in I think of Europe, I think of places like Stockholm and Reykjavik, and Helsinki, where there's tremendous innovation, in London. In the US, we have great innovation centers, and I'm based in Seattle, and Denver, and New York, and so on. And in Asia, there's great innovation centers, of course, in India in particular, but you also find them in Singapore and Kuala Lumpur, in Jakarta. So innovation is really a kind of global phenomenon, and venture funding has enabled a lot of that. So let's not be too critical of venture funding. But there is a problem, a genuine problem with venture funding, which is that you do have to have your idea and then bring it for funding and get rejected or not. I actually know so many people who have struggled to bring their idea into the market, into the world, because they can't get funding, because they can't quite convince these people. And sometimes what they can't convince them of is not about the value of the technology. Sometimes it's they can't pull a team together. Sometimes it's they can't pull together the business material that needs to go around the offering. So, for example, they can't put together the market sizing. They can't put together the kind of the total addressable market. They can't bring together the the kind of returns, the business modeling that needs to go in order to convince somebody to put money in. And one of the reasons for that is they're innovators, not business people. So they have to find the right kind of business community. And one of the things that I want us to be able to do at Nobody Studios is innovate within the studio. That is to say, first of all, I want to help these people. I want to see us discover innovations and help people to bring them to market more easily, more quickly. And we can do that by providing in the studio many of those business services um, in the broadest sense, looking at business capabilities and bring them together into teams and help create new teams, which are refactored from the original team that came to us in many cases, and then go out into the market with those teams and do so more quickly. There's another thing about the studio, though, and I talk about a studio as being not just a model of venture investment, but being a model of generative investment. And if you're thinking about joining us in the crowdfunding program, this is one of the most exciting areas for me that crowdfunding will enable, which is the studio is not just a place for raising money for ideas, it's a place for raising money and raising ideas. And we should be able to find that given the very broad base of investors that we have, including, of course, professional investors, very smart venture investors, and then the crowd of a vast number of international investors who are, perhaps investing for the first time. From them, we should be able to bring ideas, concepts, new directions into the studio, and we should be able to generate ideas from that. In particular, people will come to us with maybe a broad kind of concept that they've got. We want to be in this area. Maybe we want to do something in biotech. Maybe we want to do something in med tech. Maybe we want to do something in real estate. Maybe we want to do something in the metaverse. And they come to us with some ideas. They say, yeah, that That's interesting, but there's these other aspects of it. Let's take it to the crowd. Let's see what feedback we get within the organization and come back to them and say, yeah, we like this concept, but there are three or four other directions we could go in. We could take this idea and develop it in a way that you haven't thought of, and maybe that'll be more successful. Or maybe it even generates three or four different ideas, all of which can become separate products, separate businesses, separate services that could be taken to market. And I call that generative investment because the community that invests becomes the community that generates ideas, generates concepts. So I'm super excited about that aspect of innovation. Now, in order to kind of talk a little bit more about this over the coming weeks, we'll be interviewing people within the studio, out with the studio, people from all over the world, in fact, who've got innovative concepts. One of the key things that I always want to bring to people when I talk about innovation is that for me, innovation is not just about doing new stuff. It's not just about doing something which is new. It's actually about doing something which is radically different from what already exists. And so I often make a distinction, which others don't, but I tend to, which is a distinction between innovation and invention. For me, a lot of what passes for innovation is is invention. Um, it's a variation on what already exists. It's a new way of doing something, perhaps, but it's not radically different. Let me give you an example of that. If you have a car, if you drive a car, there's a lot of invention involved in cars. Every time you get a new model comes out, it's got some new stuff. The radical concept hasn't changed. It's still a car. It's a car and very familiar, and you could probably get in a new model and drive it straight away and feel this is this is just what I was used to. And it's got some new features which are nice, but they haven't radically rethought the car. A few years ago, I was visiting the designer Don Norman in San Diego, and I mean, when I say a few years ago, probably 8 years ago now. And Don Norman's a very famous designer. He worked for Apple. He wrote some excellent books about design, the design of everyday things, for example, which is one of the design classics that people learn when they are studying industrial design. And I visited Don Norman in his office in San Diego, out at the university. And on his whiteboard, well, his whiteboard was entirely white apart from one sentence, which said, "The car is an accessory to the smartphone." Now, 8 years ago, this was a very radical thing to say. And yet now, 8 years later, you can probably get a hint of what he was thinking about. Um, he wasn't just thinking about what new features can we add to a car. He was thinking of a radically new concept of how we relate to cars and what cars are. So I asked him, of course, what do you mean by this? What is this cryptic message on your whiteboard? What does this mean? And he said, "Well, how did you get here? You came from Seattle." I said, "Yeah, I came from Seattle. I flew down, got to the airport, took an Uber. You came here by smartphone." I said, "Well, yeah, I guess, but I came here in a car." He says, "Oh, car. The car is just a way of getting you here. It was the smartphone that got you here. The car was just an accessory that turned up and delivered you. If there was a Star Trek transporter available, if there was a helicopter available, if there was a flying drone available, you might have got here by that, but you'd still have called it up with your smartphone. Your smartphone was your interface to the world, and the car was what happened to be delivered to you. So the car was the accessory to the device. The car was the accessory to the smartphone, to the app. Now, of course, this is a deliberately provocative point of view from Don Norman, but actually, it's very important to my way of thinking about innovation because that is a radical shift in the point of view. And for me, innovation is a radical shift in our point of view. It's not enough to have invention. You have to have this different point of view. Have to have this, and I call it. We have to have radically new answers to basic questions in order to have innovation. Not just new answers, but radical new answers to basic questions. And the basic questions are they're the common questions, sometimes called the journalist's friends. The basic questions are who, what, why, where, when, and how. And you can sometimes add how much to that if you want as well. And if you can radically answer one of these questions, how? Well, we do it completely differently. Who does it? Oh, we do it. It's for a completely different audience, or nobody does it at all. It's all automated. That would be a radical answer to a question of who does something. Where did he do it? Oh, no longer on the desktop. It's now mobile and can be done anywhere. And when you think of these new radical answers, then you see innovative ideas emerging. So why would why would we need a crowd? Why would we need crowd infusion to do that? And the truth is, because outside of the scope of a relatively small number of highly innovative individuals, most of us have one or two great ideas, but our ideas are really sparked out from communication and collaboration and many minds coming together and creating new concepts. Very often, given our very different world experiences, a point raised by one person raises completely different resonances in the mind of another person, and therefore they come up with new ideas. And the more we can bring into that, the better. Now, one of the challenges we face within, not just within Nobody Studios, but within any innovation context, is the question of risk. When I when I took over at a team that was doing lab work, they actually had a sort of research lab, and when I took over that team, they showed me their projects, and they were very proud to show me the 4 or 5 projects that they had completed the previous year, and they were very proud that they were all successful. Here are the 4 or 5 successful projects we had. And I think my initial answer to that was, "Oh, well, that's terrible. All your projects succeeded. That's not good. That means you weren't being radical enough. That means you weren't breaking the boundaries enough. If everything you did worked, that means you're not taking enough risks. I want to see some failures. I want to see some things which go wrong. I want to go see some things which are so crazy that they actually don't work. And you have to say, yeah, okay, we learned from experience. Let's go back and, have another idea." And that's great. In that attitude, you'll find the possibility for innovation. There's a lot to be said, don't get me wrong, for incremental invention. I'm in the market for a new car, and I want my new car to have lots of incremental inventions. Still want it to be a car, but I want it to have lots of incremental inventions. So there's plenty of money to be made in incremental inventions, and believe me, we will generate many of them. But the real breakthroughs are going to come from innovation, and that's the role is to create these innovations. So I'm super excited, by this idea that we can bring innovation from the the outside, if you like, bring it. And I think at Nobody Studios with the crowdfunding concept, and I hope if you're listening to this, I hope that you've taken the crowdfunding concept to heart, because we want you to be part of this. We don't just want your money. We want you to be part of it. We want you to be part. It would probably be easier actually for us to go out and persuade, some billionaire founder to give us the money for to invest in the studio. But that's kind of not the point, because then you only get the opinion of one person. Not only that, you probably get the dominant opinion of one person, and that's not necessarily, a good thing. It's certainly not what we need. What we need is everybody to want to be a nobody, and not just to kind of put their money in and watch what's happening, but to be involved. And we want to enable these opportunities to be involved. And if you have ideas and you have concepts and you have things that you want to share, this is the opportunity to do it. This is the opportunity to be part of a deliberately innovative movement. Now, that's one part of what we have to do. We have to innovate. And I'm very serious. I hope you can tell I'm serious about innovation. I'm excited by innovation. I'm excited by the concept. And, I actually worry sometimes that the word innovation is overused. Everybody wants to be innovative. Everybody wants to claim innovation as part of their strategy, or to claim innovation as part of their success. Personally, I sometimes think innovation is a bit like modesty. If you claim it for yourself, then you probably isn't true. It's nice for other people to recognize and sit back your innovation, recognize your innovation, because sometimes innovation is, you think you've got a great new idea, and it turns out lots of other people have it, or it's not quite as exciting or different as you think. Another reason why we need to have the many voices, the many minds, and many eyes in this project. But the innovation side of it is one part. The other side is research, and research is not just about finding the radical new ideas, although I hope we do. It's also about understanding the scope of the work that we're doing, and where there is room for incremental invention, and where there is room for innovation, and where there's no work being done at all, and yet we could be there. Um, some of the areas in which we will be doing research, and we can predefine areas, we'll have a research agenda, and part of that research agenda, for example, for me, has been deeply involved in crypto. Now, I got to tell you, I quite often say this in interviews, and I do mean it, is that I'm a crypto skeptic. Well, there's a lot of crypto skeptics around now, but I was saying I'm a crypto skeptic when there were fewer crypto skeptics. I don't mean that I'm not interested in the technology. I don't think it works. Actually, of course, crypto is in many ways an outstanding technology, and I actually think it's going to be transformative. But crypto, it it was presented to far too many people as an investment, as a way of building value, and as a way of building value very rapidly in this kind of viral, kind of rapid development of, and people were very excited by the big numbers. Oh, there's billions of dollars on this coin, and there's billions of dollars in this infrastructure, and it's all very exciting. And then, of course, it all collapses, loses 40%, 50% of its value, more than that. As a means of investment in itself, I'm not at all excited by crypto. As an enabling technology for doing new things, I'm extremely interested in crypto. And so crypto can be thought of as having, a number of characteristics. The key thing being that it enables us to create a very, very secure transactional system, which is very low cost and extremely fast. And that really matters. It really matters in all sorts of places. I I'm American and I have family in Scotland, and if I want to send money back and forward between the US and Scotland, it costs a lot of money. It can cost you 3% on every transaction. If I use crypto, a transfer happens instantly. The costs are extremely low. We declare it, we're all done. And it's extremely efficient. I love crypto for this. And the money doesn't hang around in the wallet long enough to have any of these problems you know, um, of volatility. So it's a great transactional system. When you have a transactional system which can be as fast and as cheap as that, well, the possibilities for doing business in new ways are tremendous. And the possibility of doing business even on very small items can be really interesting and can be super important for people, for example, in emerging economies, and then frankly in economies where people don't trust the centralized systems of authority. This brings us to another use of crypto, which is the certification and authority aspect of crypto. Crypto is a great way of providing certification of ownership. So I'm really interested in all sorts of areas, which vary from stuff like work permits. A work permit, an international work permit, which is guaranteed by crypto, doesn't just give you a valid work permit; it gives you an entire chain of custody of the authorization, which is automatically updated and can be kind of instantly referenced, and enables us to create entirely new ways of certifying the authenticity of of work, of objects, of people, of services, and that's tremendously valuable. Because there's lots of places where people are investing not in crypto but in the real world objects, but they need certification and authentication of those objects. So crypto is a great way of doing that. So you can imagine, collectibles and antiques, and even areas close to my heart, like fine wines, spirits, whiskies, brandies. You want to buy them in the barrel. How do you guarantee that the barrel is the barrel that you bought? Well, crypto can enable the forms of authentication, certification, and chains of custody that could do that. So that opens up a whole world of models. Other things that crypto can do is enable fractional ownership. Because if you buy a coin, for example, you buy Bitcoin, you don't very few people own a Bitcoin. You own a tiny proportion of a Bitcoin. But that's a fractional ownership, and crypto and the blockchain enables you to do that. So fractional ownership of objects can be extremely interesting to people rather than, owning like an entire object that might cost billions of dollars. You could actually own a little share of that and feel that you're taking part in that system, and that you could get shares as rewards. You could get, tokens. Um, and therefore you can play a part, you can play an active part in markets, in communities, in ways of thinking, and in ways of behaving that you would have had no access to before. Now, in order to really get into those scenarios, frankly, it takes a lot of research. Many of them have already been explored, but there's many gaps in there. When you apply them across all the different verticals we might be interested in, well, there's a ton of work to be done to see if how that can play out. Other areas of research that might be interesting. Well, one, I talked earlier in passing about medical technology, and gosh, there's so much happening in medical technology. And of course, we've already got research and work going on in areas. So Webdelics is looking at psychedelics and how psychedelics can be used for mental health. And then there's all sorts of other areas in neurology and in behavioral medicine that we could be interested in. And again, all of these areas require research in order for us to generate the ideas and either the inventions or the innovations that may enable us to make a breakthrough. So, those are very typical areas. The crowd will also generate lots of areas, especially in geographies that I'm not in just now. For example, in verticals that I don't know much about, we'll be able to discover through the crowd many opportunities for new areas of research. And not only that, as you can imagine, we can use the crowd as an engine of research. The crowd is not super important to remember. The crowd for us is not just an engine of finance, it's an engine of investment, it's an engine of ideation, it's an engine of research, it'll be an engine of testing, it'll be an engine of marketing. That's what we mean by crowd infused. We're not just kind of crowd funded, we are crowd infused. Crowd is part of everything we think about. Every time I have an idea, I know what Mark McNally will say to me, the CEO of Nobody. I know what he'll say. He'll say, "Well, how does this work with the crowd? What is the crowd impact on this, or what is the impact of this on the crowd? What role does crowd play?" And this is why what we need to think about continuously. What is crowd doing for us? So I'm excited about that, and that's I got some people I'm going to talk to in the coming weeks that we'll cover the cloud conversations with, and we're going to talk about all of those aspects, what crowd infusion actually means. What does crowd mean for innovation and for research? As we kind of come to the end of the stream, there's a couple of other things I think is worth talking about, which is if you have ideas, what do you do about them? Well, you can come to the Idea Lab, and Min Bagatia has just a great live stream about the Idea Lab and talks about how the ideas are generated. If you have ideas for research, in other words, you have an area which you think we should be looking at, but you don't actually have a specific concept at that time, then you can come, get in touch with me, Donald at nobodystudios.com. And you can, talk to me about that. And I'll be very happy to jump on a call with you and we'll be able to, think about whether this is an area of research that we want to explore. Or even if it's an area of research that you want to do some of the research for and be part of, and then bring your results and bring your insights to us. And we'll be very happy to, be if- make you a nobody, but have you as part of the kind of nobody family in this way. This is one of the things that's I think is inspiring about the studio. You can be part of this. You can be part of every aspect of this. Um, the other thing about innovation and research that I want to talk about is sometimes the concern that people have about, but this is my idea. I've come up with an idea. I want it. I want the intellectual property. I want all the kudos that goes with it. I want to be the one that drives it to market. I want to direct the company that's going to do this, that's going to build it, that's going to market it, that's going to sell it, and then I want all the benefits of being that person who came up with the idea. And you might think, well, in that case, I should just go to a venture fund and do a traditional funding. And for sure, if you've done all that work, if you have the idea pretty fully much worked out, if you've done all that business work that I've said at the beginning, working out the total addressable market, working out the business plan and the funding plan and all those things, then the traditional venture studio is possibly a route for you. But many people have these ideas. They really want to be the person who drives them, but at the same point, they don't want to be a business person. They don't want to be an accountant. They don't want to be a bookkeeper. They don't want to be a fundraiser. Come to the studio, talk to us about that. Um, the model is fractional. The model is crowdsourced. The model is highly shared. But that doesn't mean it's the only way of doing it. There are all sorts of things we can do within the studio, all sorts of the flexibility of the studio is what should interest you, not just its ability to execute in one particular way and we always do things that way. If the right idea comes up in the right way, sure, we still want it to be crowd infused. We still want it to be in the studio. We still want it to have all the benefits of the studio, but there's still many things we can do. So if you have ideas, don't be shy about coming forward with them. I don't think that this isn't for you. There's always a way of finding something exciting. I am particularly interested in breaking out of a kind of the narrow confines of traditional Western venture funding ways of thought. So if you are based internationally, if you're working in communities which are badly served by venture just now, if you're in Africa, if you're in Southeast Asia, if you're in, if you're in India, but if you're in northern India and you're far south of India and you're areas where the tech community isn't reaching out to, reach out to us. We have that. If you're in the Middle East and you're in, areas where there's a great deal of venture funding for specific verticals and specific ideas, but you've got another idea, come to us. There's all sorts of possibilities that we can explore, and I'm really excited to get the input into this. So that's really where I'm coming from. Research for me is a way of us working with the crowd to generate insight. The innovation strategy for me is a way of us working with the crowd to generate innovation and ideas. And of course, the idea lab is the way in which we get those into businesses. So if this is your area, if this excites you, then I think Nobody Studio is a great option for you. And I think I'm really hope that we can have conversations stretching out into the future about how we can take this further, how we can make it work, and how you can be part of it. That's the critical thing. So thank you very much for listening into the live stream. I hope you found it interesting. Reach out to me if you like at donald@nobodystudios.com, but certainly look at the bottom right of your screen and see if you is it bottom right? The bottom something of the screen, and see if you'd be interested in following up the crowdfunding and being part of this journey, because this is really where we all want to be. So with this, thank you very much, and we'll end the stream here. And I hope to see you in the future, and I hope to see you as part of the Nobody Studios journey. Thanks very much.